Hello, everybody. My name is Angkap Ngamgetsap, and I'm the TRIRIGA application architect. Today's sessions for the lease accounting changes in 10531. We're going to be going over the index adjustment at the modifications for the GAAP leases. The agenda for today is that we're going to go over variable become fixed on the GAAP lease situation and changes that we did in the application side. And then I'm just going to go over the demo, deep dive. There's like a couple use case examples that I want to show you, and no limitation, and then ended with the reference materials. So the variable becomes fixed payment on the GAAP lease under ASC 842. An index-based variable payment should move from variable lease payment to the fixed payment if the following occurred. So when you have a change in the lease term, for example, like extension, expansion, exercise a renewal option, or reasonably certain to exercise an option, or you have a change in amount probable under the residual value guarantees. The changes that we did in the application is we change in the contract attribute, which is the new object that we added into this 10531 release. The object resides in tri-intermediate module. The field that is used for this particular feature is the variable becomes fixed for index. Is used in the workflow to update the likely minimum payment field on the affected payment line items. So I'm just going to go to TRIRIGA and then show you these 4 use cases. The first one would be the change in assessment when you reasonably certain to renew an option, to do a renewal option. And then the second use case would be the change in probable amount under the RVG, residual value guaranteed. And the third case would be when you do a lease extension. And the last would be lease expansion. So let me end the slide and then go back to the TRIRIGA. So I'm logging in as the ANCAP test. So my Safari would be the lease admin logged in, and my Chrome browser would be the lease accountant logged in. So my lease admin user is ANCAP test, and then my lease accountant user is ANCAP test 2. So just for the sake of saving time, so I already have the records in these scenarios created. So we're just going to go over to the change in assessment first. So the change in assessment before the modification happened. Basically, in this record, I already have the lease activated. So at the lease activation, and then I also have one index adjustment calculator, or I already have index for the first year change. Basically, in year 2015, I already applied the 3% on top of my minimum payment. So my minimum payment on the clause, I have just one clause. So basically, I have 2 payments set up for these scenarios. First payment would be for the first 3 years of $50,000, and then the second payment is for that renewal term 2 more years, which is for another $50,000. Then I go and then set up the clause, right? So my clause in these scenarios, I set up 2 separate clauses. So the first clause, it is 2% and 4%, 2% minimum and 4% maximum. And I start the adjustment on 7/1/2015 for 2 years. So it will end 6/30/2017, and this is my base payment, right? And if I want to, I can add the second payment in here too. But in these scenarios, I just set up a separate clause so that I won't be confused that okay, which clause is for my option term and which clause is for my first 3 years term. So I create the same clause with the minimum 2% as well and maximum 4%. And I start the adjustment on the 7/1/2017. Basically, there's no gap between the first adjustment end and then the start of the adjustment of the second clause starts, like renewal term starts. So I set up 2 clauses, and this clause is for the renewal term payment. So this clause is basically for the index adjustment part of the renewal term. And then I just close that. And on the options tab, I have an option of renewal for 2 more years. The effective date is start like the end of the next day of the end based on the end of the original term, which is 6/30/2017. So my effective start date is 7/1/2017, right? And renewal for two years. And this renewal term payment would be my payment schedule for the renewal term. Once I have all that, and then, I get all the, activation and the lease going through, the first initial lease going through, and then I apply the index adjustment first year. Like I said earlier, that I apply the index adjustment for the 1/1/2015 year, and then I put that like 103 in there. So when I looked at the adjustment after this is already issued, so now my payment is starting adjusting 51,500 here, and then 52,530 here. It's like the first use case of the another index T-text that I did it earlier. So for my adjusting of the 3rd year where my payment schedule changed, right? So at that time, because I used the compare to previous in the clause, so it is just taking the previous, because myself schedule at $50,000, so it's using 52,530 times 2% compare with the $50,000, and it's compared to previous using the greater amount. So it just used 52,530 times 2%. So now it's become 53,580.6. Okay, so this is before the modification happened. So this is done. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be logging in as a lease accountant now. So lease admin is done, applying all the index adjustment calculators. So the lease accountant now going to exercise, not exercise, sorry, going to so the lease accountant will come, and then he will just come in and then do the change in assessment. So he logged in as a lease accountant and then come in and then click on that account revise. This pops up, shows up, and change type. There will be 3 options, so he'll pick like change in assessment. So from what period that this option should be affected? I mean, like the schedule should be affected, recalculated, basically. So I'll just like say that I know that this renewal should happen in like, when it was at the time of 2017-01. That's when I know that this renewal for 2 more years should be placed or reasonably certain. So when I pick that, and then you see that this option is available, so what they do is they just like, click on this renew option and then continue. So once that is done, so your lease will become editable for the lease accountant. On accounting tab now, it's editable. So because of the renewal term is bigger now, so you also have to do a reclassify the lease. So just re-answer all these questions and then just click on this calculate lease treatment. After the reclassified, then the lease will go into this calculate mode because the NPV has to be recalculated based on the new reasonable term for 2 more years of your lease. Once it is done calculating the new NPV, the lease accountant also need to remeasure this lease. So he will click on this recalculate accounting schedule to regenerate the schedule from the fiscal period that he picked, which is from 1/1/2017. So after he clicked on that recalculate accounting schedule, you see this right now because I apply I apply the index adjustment calculator, so it's already have all the variable populated, right? This is before the modification. I haven't yet clicked on the recalculate accounting schedule, so my schedule stays the same until unless I click on this recalculate accounting schedule. This is what we're gonna be seeing. So I'm just gonna close this record and then I'm gonna go to this over to after the modification. So I did the same modification for this record, which is the choose the reason be certain that this lease will be renewed for 2 more years. So and then I did all the lease treatment calculation to get my NPV updated, reclassified it, and also remeasured it. So after that, you see that my NPV will change as well as my asset value. And the most important thing is that the variable lease column, it is now only, it will be clear at the time when you do a modification. So it's effective at 2017-01 until the end of the lease. That variable of yours now become fixed. So it was showing $52,020. But it is now $52,530 because that $510 is now part of your minimum lease payment. So this is where we said the variable becomes fixed now. So again, at that point, your lease, variable lease payment column will be cleared. And those will be part of your minimum lease payment, which is populated as part of your net rent payment. So if you sum this total net rent payment with the total variable lease payment, it should be equal to your total cash, which is total payment line item. So this is the first scenario, the change in assessment. When you reasonably certain on, and taking an option. So I'm going to go back to this use case now. So the second use case that I want to show you is a change in probable amount under the RVG, which is the residual value guarantee. So again, I'm going to be logging in as a lease admin, so I can show you first. So in this lease, my lease is also commenced 7/1/2014 and 6/30/2019, and I have a payment of 5 years from 7/1/2014 and 6/30/2019 for $50,000. And then I also have an index adjusted set up. So the clause is created from 2014 as my base, and then, I just start at 7/1/2015 for 4 years, and 6/30/2019, minimum 2%, maximum 4%. And I tie the base rent payment schedule to this clause. I don't have any option for this one. And then it goes to the lease accountant and all that, and then lease accountant already populating the residual value guarantee day one, $10,000, just the probable amount, right? And then he already activate the lease, and then again the lease admin come back, and then he already entered in or update the index for the first year of the adjustment, which is 2015 7/1, and that's again 103% or index, and then the 3% will be used to update the amount. So the payment will go up to be $51,500 from 7/1/2015 year, and then going up 2% because of the minimum percent increase that's set in the index clause. And the total payment would be like $3.147. So all that is the same, nothing changed. This is before the modification happened. So now I'm gonna go to logged in as a lease accountant. So the lease accountant comes in, and then he goes into that contractual factor. He'll be notified that, and he said that, this lease residual value guarantee amount is changed again, the probable amount. So he'll come in the lease, and then he'll do the accounting revise and change type to contractual factor, and pick the fiscal period that needs to be affected, or he knows that at that period the probable amount is changed. So let's say 2017-01. And right now that residual value guarantee is populated with the amount that we entered earlier. So now I'm gonna change it to like 15,000, and then continue. So once that is done, you see this attention message. This is the purpose of, like, we don't want to do, like before, we used to do like a copy of the history lease on the revise. When you do like a revision or modification, that's when we take a copy of the lease. And for this lease, we already did an enhancement on that, so that, the copy of the lease is not doing on the revise or a modification of the lease, like on that form, because it takes some time. Because of that reason, now we will ask the user to click on this recalculate NPV that is showing here, which is this field. You might seeing it multiple times, that this recalculate NPV is for. So it's meant to be used when you only need to recalculate NPV, like this case. You don't need to reclassify the lease. You only need to remeasure, right? So, but the recalculate NPV has to be done because your probable in RVG is part of your minimum lease payment. So once you've done that, once you click on this recalculate NPV, if you don't click on these and then you just click on this recalculate accounting schedule, it won't let you do that until you click on these recalculate NPV. Even when you do that, it won't let you do. So until you click on this recalculate NPV, and then once that is done, just waiting until that recalculate NPV is finished. Then we also have to, again, lease accountant come and then remeasure this lease, which is clicking on the recalculate accounting schedules. And the other record. Okay, so once that NPV calculation is done, you see that your NPV will be updated. And then the lease accountant also need to recalculate the accounting schedule. So the schedule at this point is not yet recalculated. So you see the variable lease payment is populated from where you apply the index adjustment until the end of the lease, right? If there's any change, the difference between the cash payment and the minimum lease payment. So at this point, it's still there. And then I'm just gonna click on this recalculate accounting schedule. Once I did that, this is what I'm gonna be seeing. So this is after the modification. It's the same scenarios I did. So I update the residual value guarantee probable amount to be $15,000. I already did the recalculate NPV amount, and now my right-of-use asset is updated, as well as my operating schedule. So you see at the time of the modification period, which is 2017-01, again, my variable lease payment amount is wiped. There's nothing after that anymore. But those amount is now part of my minimum lease payment. So it was $52,020 with the $510 variable. So that $510 is now plopped into my net rent payment. So my net rent is going up to be $52,530 now. And from that point onward, its variable become fixed. So the variable column is wiped. Nothing is there. Again, if you sum the total of the net rent payment and with the variable lease payment, it should be equal to your total payment line item amount. So that's the second use case, which is how the variable becomes fixed when you do a contractual factor, the change of the probable amount for the residual value guarantee. So the next use case would be the lease extension. When you do a lease extension, I'm going back to the record again. I'm going to be showing extension. I'm logging in as a lease admin, and this is the before modification. So the lease started with only 3 years. I only have 3 years lease started 7/1/2014 and 6/30/2017. And my payment is only go out for 3 years, which is the same, 7/1/2014 and 6/30/2017. I have an index clause created for from 7/1/2015 for 2 more years, so ended 6/30/2017 with minimum of 2%, maximum of 4%, and this is my base payment schedule. And with all that, and then, lease accountant already generated the schedule, and then it comes back to lease admin, and lease admin already applied the index adjustment calculator when he knows that there's an index change for the year of 2015, 07. So at that time, he already applied 3% on top of, what was minimum. So my payment is now changing to be $51,500, and then 2% on top of that for the last year, it's become $52,530. So with all that, this is now my, starting point before I do a modification. So now I'm logging in as a lease admin. So lease admin said that we will do the real extension. So what he would do is he would just do contract revise. This is a lease admin again, not the lease accountant. So lease admin will do contract revise, and then he'll see this option, only data revise or amendment. So we'll pick the amendment. Data revise is for not the, when you have a name change, address change, or something like that, nothing very important or affecting the accounting schedule. So he does the amendment, and then he'll pick the fiscal period of when he knows that the extension should happen. So I'll pick 2017-01 and do the extension and click on continue. So he'll come, and then he'll go to general tab, and lease expiration date is now have to change to 2019, because that's where I want to do 2 more years extension. So that would be updated to 2019. And then on the payments tab, I'm going to be creating a new payment schedule as well for 2 more years that I want to extend the lease to. So it would be 7/1/2017, or the same amount for the same amount of money, $50,000, and payment schedule for 24 period. And then create the schedule. So once that is done, now I have 2 payment schedule. So this payment schedule, it is for the extension term. So I also want this payment schedule to be an index adjustment as well. So if you have already the clause that you want to use the same minimum or same maximum, then you can just add that extension term payment schedule in here. Or you can also create a separate one so that you separate it out, that this is the clause for the extension term. It's fine as well. In these scenarios, I'm going to just create a separate one. So I know that, there's a separate one for extension term and then another one for my original term. Then I'll just do the include in index adjustment. And I'm going to use the compare and use greater payment, because now I have 2 clauses, so it will do the compare, right? I have 2 clauses now. So the cost index would be CPI, and then 2016 would be my base, 100%, 7/1/2017, no GAAP, because I have 2 clauses. Therefore, my first adjustment date of my new clause would be the next day of the end date of my last clause. Then I do 2, and then 4 maximum, the same way I did for the other clause. And then I do this payment schedule of the new one that I just created. So once I have all those set up, right? And save and close. Then I'll just submit this for the accounting to review. So once the accounting to, once I have all those, then I submit for the accounting to review. So just coming for the step 2. So you see that I don't have access to do anything anymore. I can only view. So what I can see is that my payment schedule is now in like schedule mode or status. And then my payments line item is generated for the new terms as well, with the increase of the 2% adjustment on top of the compare to previous that I choose, right? Which is the greater, use the greater amount. So with all those adjustments happen, then my total is now 3.147 with 5-year lease now. So back to my lease accountant logged in. So my lease accountant will see now on the submit, right? Once the lease admin submit, he will see on the accounting account, it's now his job to do the reclassify and remeasure the lease. So at this point, you see that the NPV and the asset values hasn't changed yet. And then you'll see that then he will just like do the calculate lease treatment, sorry. He'll just come and then do the calculate lease treatment and then recalculate accounting schedule. When he does that, what he'll see is, let's say, so now the NPV is changed with the calculate lease treatment is done, and the reclassify and remeasure is done. So what you see is he would already have that period. I did it 2018-07 for this scenario. So he'll see that at this point. Oh, I opened the wrong record. Sorry. Open the new record. Okay, so this is the extension. Sorry. So now you will see that at this point of 2017-01, that $510 is now part of the fixed minimum lease payment. So instead of showing $52.20, so it shows now $52,530 from that point onward. And again, the NPV and the asset value will be updated with the 2 years extension added. And that's for the extension scenario. Last one is the lease expansion. So the lease expansion, this is where I logged in as the lease admin. Expand. So for the lease expansion scenarios, before the modification happened, I have the lease for 5 years, 7/1/2014, 6/30/2019. My payment is also for 5 years for $50,000 a month. Then I have a clause created for this index, and I use compare to previous as a default, and set up all these adjustment and the year of adjustment, as well as tie the base payment schedule to this clause. So once that's all in, I just submit for accounting to review, and accountant just go and reclassify the lease and remeasure the lease, and then it comes back, activate, and then it comes back to the lease admin. So the lease admin in this record itself I already have the first index adjustment calculator, which is from 7/1/2015 year. Apply 3% for that. So it's $1,500 on top. So now my payment is updated with the $1,500 for that year, and then 2% on top of that. So now it is become 3.147. Once that is all done, so the lease admin, in this use case, he will just do the contract revise to do the re-expansion. So he'll come in and then again do amendment from, let's say, I know it when it is, I noted that it will happen in 2017-07, 2018-07. And I pick this expansion. Then go back to this payment schedule. What I do is I'll break this payment schedule and I'll basically update this payment schedule. So I just click on this adjust payments and then I'll check on this payment schedule that I want to do adjustment on. So my payment, basically I expand and then my payment is up to $55,000. So it is changed in 7/1/2018. My payment goes up like $55,000 instead of 50. So just do process adjustment. Once that's done, we'll see that now the payment schedule are broken, well, it's broken into two from 7/1/2014 and 6/30/2019 is broken down into 6 and 6/30/2018 for $50,000, and then from 7/1/2018 until the end of the lease is $55,000, as well as your payment line item. So the payment line item from this point is still gonna be, it's now $55,000. Okay. And then the lease, this new payment schedule, it will be part of this index automatically. It's updated here as well. Like, you know, there will be two payment schedule showing in here. And after that, he'll just click on this submit for accounting to review. So once that is done, your payment is still gonna be $55,000 because I said to use the greater value. So it's not gonna change because $53,580 times 2% is still lesser than $55,000. And then logging in as a lease accountant. So lease accountant, let me show you first on the submit. So lease accountant comes in after the lease had been submitted for accountant to review. So now you see that the variable is updated and all because of the apply for the first time. So what you have to do now, because of the expansion happens, so you also have to reclassify the lease. So re-answer all these questions and then reclassify the lease. And then click on this calculate lease statement. Then once that is done, the lease NPV for that from that period, modification period, will be updated, and then he will need to do the remeasure the lease. Click on these recalculate accounting schedules. So once he clicks on that recalculate accounting schedule, it's gonna open the last record, which is this one. So you'll see that asset value is updated, and at the time of the modification period, which is 2018-07, the variable payment amount is wiped, and it is wiped from there. There's no variable anymore from that point. And the minimum lease payment is now $55,000, which is whatever amount that you specify or update in the payment schedule. Right? You break it into two, and now that amount is now $55,000. And that is the end of my live demo for the last use case. Gonna go back to the PowerPoint. So the no limitations for this feature is that when doing an amendment to adjust base payment, which is like expansion or you lower or reduction, on an index lease, a user can only adjust payment using the update action, which is the update action. There's two options. It's update using the update the payment line item only, but that case it doesn't work for index. It's only the update or split payment schedule option that to make the variable result from index become fixed payment. So only the update or split payment schedule option will work for this index lease. And we still do not do the partial calculation on an index adjustment. It's not yet supported. The reference materials reference the lease accounting best practice for the index adjustment. We also will provide the index adjustment use case spreadsheets, as well as the release notes. And that's all for this session. Thank you for listening.